The steam from my coffee curled into the air, tracing delicate ribbons in the soft morning light. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of my apartment overlooking downtown Chicago, silk blouse pressed crisp against my skin, gold hoops catching the sunlight. My mornings were sacred, 10 minutes of stillness before the chaos of back-to-back meetings. That's when my phone buzzed.
Once. Twice.
Then again. At first, I ignored it. People didn't get this number unless they were important, and the world could wait until I finished my first sip. But when I finally glanced down, my breath hitched. It was a name I hadn't seen in years, Mary Ann, my older sister. I let out a humorless laugh. The last time I heard her voice, she told me I was too young to know what's best and hung up on me. That was 5 years ago. Now she was calling. And not just once, 3 missed calls and a text that read, "Please, Emily, we need to talk. It's bad." My heart thudded in my chest, not from fear but from something far sharper, vindication. Because 5 years ago, I warned them. I told them what would happen if they kept ignoring the signs. They didn't listen. And now they were paying for it. 5 years ago, I wasn't the woman standing in a high-rise apartment with a view of the skyline. I was sitting at my parents' dining table, clutching a lukewarm glass of water, trying to keep my voice from shaking. Mary Ann sat across from me, arms crossed, her nails painted a perfect shade of red. My father leaned back in his chair, scrolling through his phone like this conversation wasn't worth his full attention. Mom was the only one looking at me, and even she looked exhausted. "I'm telling you," I said, my voice cracking a little despite my best effort, "this investment is a scam. I've done the research. The numbers don't add up. The CEO has lawsuits against him." "Emily," my father cut me off with a sigh, setting his phone down. "You're 23. You don't know the first thing about investments. Let us handle this." "I am handling this," I snapped, tears burning behind my eyes. "I stayed up all night going through their filings. I'm just asking you not to put in your retirement savings. Please. You could lose everything." Mary Ann rolled her eyes. "God, Emily, you're so dramatic. Just because you got a business degree doesn't make you some kind of financial genius." The words landed like a slap. I looked to Mom, desperate for backup, but she just pressed her lips together and said softly, "Maybe we should trust her father on this one."
And that was it.
I stood up so quickly my chair screeched across the hardwood. My hands were trembling, but my voice came out steady.
"Fine.
Do whatever you want. But when it all comes crashing down, don't say I didn't warn you." I grabbed my bag and walked out before they could see the tears spill over. That night, I sat in my tiny apartment and stared at the note my grandmother had left me when she passed, a single line written in her looping handwriting. "Sometimes, sweetheart, the only way to make them listen is to show them." I taped it to my bathroom mirror. The next morning, I opened my laptop and applied for a job at a small financial firm. If they wouldn't listen to me, I'd make sure the next time I spoke, no one would dare ignore me again. That job at the tiny financial firm was nothing glamorous, just a junior analyst role where I spent most of my days staring at spreadsheets and chasing missing receipts. But I treated it like the first step of a ladder no one else believed I could climb. My boss, Dana, was a sharp, no-nonsense woman in her 40s with a reputation for being tough but fair. She was the first person to actually listen when I had an idea. One day, during a late-night audit, I noticed an error in a client's portfolio that could have cost them hundreds of thousands. I hesitated before speaking up. I still carried the sting of being dismissed at home, but Dana just nodded, double-checked my math, and said, "Good catch, Emily. That just saved us a lawsuit." It was the first time in months that I felt seen. From there, everything became about growth. I worked through weekends, took online certifications, devoured books on finance and entrepreneurship. I stopped posting on social media completely. No more desperate attempts to prove my life was on track. If my family thought I was struggling, so be it. Money was tight at first. I lived on instant ramen and took the bus even through brutal Chicago winters. Some nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I was wasting my 20s chasing a dream no one cared about. But then came the first win. Dana called me into her office one Monday morning, and handed me a file. "We're giving you your first client," she said. "Small account, but let's see what you can do." I poured everything into that client. When their portfolio gained 15% in 6 months, word got around. By the end of the year, I had 10 accounts under my name and a bonus that was bigger than my entire salary. 2 years later, I left the firm to start my own boutique financial consulting company. It was terrifying. I had no safety net, no family cheering me on, no one to bail me out if I failed. But Dana gave me one last gift before I left: her mentorship. She introduced me to her network, vouched for me, and even became one of my first investors. The early days of the company were brutal. I worked from a desk wedged into my studio apartment, sleeping 4 hours a night, taking calls at 2 a.m. for international clients. But slowly it paid off. By year 3, I moved into a small downtown office. Year 4, I hired my first 2 employees. By year 5, I was running a multi-million-dollar consultancy with clients across 3 states. And through it all, I kept my family in the dark. Holiday dinners were polite but distant. Marian would ask, "So, still working that little finance job?" And I would just smile and say, "Something like that." Because I wasn't ready for them to know who I had become. Not yet. The day Marian showed up at my office, I almost didn't let her in. I was reviewing quarterly reports with my assistant when the front desk buzzed. "Emily," her voice crackled over the intercom, "there's a woman here asking for you. Says her name is Marianne. She looks upset." For a moment, I just sat there, frozen. I'd imagined this moment so many times, but always on my own terms, not with her standing in my lobby, looking for help. "Send her up," I said finally, my voice calm, even though my heart was hammering against my ribs. When Marian walked in, she stopped dead in the doorway. Her eyes swept over everything: the white marble floors, the gold-framed abstract art, the wall of glass that showed the Chicago skyline. This is yours?" she asked, almost in a whisper. I nodded, gesturing toward the leather chair across from my desk. "Sit." She did, stiffly, like the furniture might bite her. Her hands twisted in her lap. For the first time in my life, Marian looked small. "Emily," she started, her voice breaking, we lost everything." I stayed quiet. She took a deep breath. "The investment went under. Dad's retirement account, Mom's savings, even my house gone. We're drowning. And I remembered what you said that night. You tried to warn us." The silence stretched between us, heavy and charged. Finally, I stood and walked to the cabinet in the corner of the room. Inside, neatly framed, was the note from Grandma: "Sometimes, sweetheart, the only way to make them listen is to show them." I set it on the desk. Marian stared at it, then at me. "You built all of this?" "Yes," I said simply. "From nothing." She let out a shaky laugh, half disbelief, half shame. "God, we thought you were barely scraping by. We used to joke that you'd come running back when you couldn't make rent." I raised an eyebrow. "And yet, here you are, running to me." Her cheeks flushed. "Emily, I'm sorry. We were wrong about you. About everything." For a long moment, I just looked at her, really looked at her. This was the sister who used to call me dramatic, who rolled her eyes when I cried, who dismissed my warnings like they were childish tantrums. Now she was here in my office, asking for my help. I walked back to my chair, smoothed my skirt, and sat down. "Tell me exactly what you need." And for the next hour, she did: the foreclosure notice, the mounting debts, the unpaid medical bills for Mom. I listened carefully, taking notes, my expression unreadable. When she was done, she looked at me hopefully. "So, will you help us?" I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence stretch one more beat. "Maybe," I said finally, "but on my terms." Her shoulders slumped in relief, until she saw the look in my eyes. This wasn't the same little sister she used to talk over at the dinner table. This was a woman who had built her own empire. And now it was my turn to decide who got a seat at the table. I didn't say yes right away. Instead, I closed my notebook, folded my hands, and looked Marianne directly in the eye. "If I help you," I said, my voice calm but firm, "things will never go back to the way they were." She frowned. What do you mean? I mean, I said slowly, I will not be treated like the naive little sister who doesn't know what she's talking about. I will not sit at another dinner table and be silenced. If I'm going to save you, you're going to listen this time. She swallowed hard and nodded, waiting. First, I said, Dad is done making financial decisions for the family. From this point forward, you follow my plan, every dollar accounted for, every payment approved by me. Marianne hesitated. He won't like that. I gave her a flat look. He liked losing his retirement more? She looked away. Second, I continued, you're going to get a job. A real one. No more living off credit cards and hoping for miracles. I'll even help you polish your resume, but you're going to show up and rebuild your life with your own hands. Her lips trembled. And Mom? Mom is moving in with me for now. She needs stability, and frankly, she needs a break from cleaning up everyone else's messes. Marianne's eyes welled with tears. Emily, you'd really do all this? I leaned forward, my tone softening but still resolute.
Yes.
But this isn't a free pass. This is a second chance. For all of us. And if you want my money, my expertise, my time, you have to respect my boundaries. You don't talk over me. You don't roll your eyes when I speak. You don't dismiss me because you don't like what I'm saying. You treat me as an equal because I've earned that. Marianne nodded quickly, tears streaming now. I will. I promise. I handed her a tissue. Good. Because if we do this my way, you won't just survive this, you'll come out stronger. But if you fight me, if you ignore me again, I walk away. And next time, there won't be a safety net. She wiped her face, her voice small but steady. Okay. We'll do it your way. For the first time since she walked into my office, I allowed myself to smile. This isn't about revenge, Marianne, I said gently. This is about making sure we never end up back here again. Over the next few months, everything shifted. Dad fought me at first. He didn't like handing over the financial reins to his youngest daughter. But when I showed him the new budget and a plan to recover some of their losses, his resistance softened. I think, deep down, he was relieved someone else was steering the ship for once. Marianne found a job at a local nonprofit. It wasn't glamorous and the paycheck was modest, but the first time she called me to tell me she'd finished a full week of work without missing a day, I could hear the pride in her voice. Mom settled into my guest room, filling my sleek, modern apartment with the smell of her cooking and the soft hum of old jazz records. For the first time in years, our conversations weren't just about putting out fires. We actually laughed together again. One evening, after a long day of client meetings, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, touching the yellowed note from Grandma that still hung there. Sometimes, sweetheart, the only way to make them listen is to show them. I smiled at my own reflection. I had shown them. Not with screaming matches or desperate pleas, but with results. With strength. With proof. The next Sunday, I invited everyone over for dinner. When we sat down, Dad raised his glass and said quietly, Emily, thank you for saving us. There were tears in everyone's eyes, including mine, but they weren't the tears of the girl who once stormed away from that dinner table. These were the tears of a woman who had fought for her voice and finally been heard. As I cleared the table later that night, I caught my reflection in the window, city lights glittering behind me, a life I had built with my own hands, and I whispered, almost to myself, they refused my advice once, but they'll never ignore it again. And this time, it wasn't a warning. It was a promise.